Hi, my name is Ronan Kennedy, and I'm a career coach. Today, I'm talking with Talia, my friend Talia. Talia, thanks so much for coming over to speak to us.
It's a pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Tell us, what do you do?
I am a travel consultant and I focus specifically on Portugal, Spain, and Morocco.
Fantastic. And how did you get into travel consultancy? It sounds like a dream job for many people.
It is wonderful. I would say like to get there it wasn't something that I thought about when I started, but it definitely took years and steps to kind of get there. But I've been working in the travel industry on one side of it, in the hospitality, or in the other side in the travel agency for the past 10 years. So it's a gradual process.
A gradual process. Speaking of gradual processes and getting there, I think I read earlier on your website that you've moved 18 times to 8 different countries. Is that right?
I have, yes.
So what was that like?
Lots of packing and unpacking. I definitely didn't have a theme when I was moving. I'm born and raised in Ukraine. I lived in Saudi Arabia. I lived in San Diego, Boston, China, Jordan, Dubai, Spain, and now in Lisbon. I don't know if that's eight. I think I lost track. But it's definitely, I think every single time you move and every single time you travel, you kind of push yourself into being a little uncomfortable. And there's a lot of wonderful things that can happen when you're a little bit uncomfortable. You're much more open to new ideas, to trying out new things. So I feel like that has definitely urged me to push myself into being a little bit uncomfortable.
Right. You must be an expert at getting to know new people and making connections if you've had to do it 18 times, right?
I like people. I like people, yeah.
Fantastic. What do you think was the biggest learning that you gained from living in 8 different countries and trying to engage with all these different cultures?
That's a great question. I think just the uncomfortable side of it is like I learned that it's good to like it's good to keep on moving. Like movement in your life is always really good. And it doesn't have to be the packing and unpacking kind of movement, but being curious, being just having your mind be open to new things is very, very valuable. And you don't always have to agree. You just have to be open to understanding how someone else thinks. So for example, I grew up in Ukraine. So for the first 10 years of my life, everybody looks like me, everybody talked like me, everybody understood each other because we had the same life experiences, life goals. It was a very homogeneous society, I would say. And then I was dropped in the middle of an international community in Saudi Arabia and had to learn English, had to kind of just learn so many new things. Saudi Arabian culture is very different. American culture is very different. My friends were like from 6 different countries, just my close friend group, let alone the class and things like that. So you just automatically are exposed to the world being very, very different from what you're used to. And I think once you have that as a child, you just understand that it's very natural for people to think very differently from you, and that doesn't make it bad. So I think being moving so many different times and experiencing so many different cultures has caused me to be very curious and open-minded about how people think.
Like, did you struggle with that? Like, I would imagine a kid going to, these different countries of radically different cultures would be a bit of a struggle, or was it just, you're like a sponge at that age where you're like, okay, that's the way it is, fine.
I think it was a bit of both. I definitely remember when my mom told me that we were moving to Saudi Arabia. I think I was in the excited part. Well, I definitely cried. And then I looked at the map and I saw that Saudi Arabia was bigger than Egypt. And we are learning about Egypt in school at that time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love the pyramids. I love pharaohs. Saudi Arabia is bigger. There must be more pyramids there. Great. Packed my little backpack. I was excited to go. And then like a couple of weeks in, once in your kid brain it settles, that's actually your new life and you're not moving back to your friends and your family and things like that. I definitely had a moment of crisis of like, I want to go back. Like everything's so different here. But I think at a certain point, it's a little bit easier for kids to start absorbing new things and learning new things because you don't have such a hard base of what is normal, right? Like everything is changing. You yourself are changing. You're growing into an adult or a young adult. Your life goals and things are changing. So as a kid, it's a little bit easier to absorb new things. And if you establish a habit for that very, very young, then as an adult, you know that the world's always changing.
Right, right,
Yeah,
fantastic. So it's like the Rolling Stone gathers no moss, right? Because it's always moving, it's continuing to grow.
perhaps. Yeah.
Um, and then in terms of your career, there's been quite a lot of change and a bit of growth over the years as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, do you have like a specific question about that?
Yeah, so like, how did you get into travel, being a travel consultant? Did you just wake up one day and decide, okay, this is the pathway for me. I want to help people explore, or was it more, yeah, slow or organic than that?
Yeah. Well, so when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a ballerina, a princess, and a lawyer all at the same time. Um, but when I moved to Saudi and I started learning English, and part of the process of learning the English is watching movies, and I got really into Gilmore Girls. I think at the time that I started learning English, we had like two or three the DVD sets, the colorful DVD sets of Gilmore Girls, and Lorelai had an inn that she ran and then that she owned, and I was like, I want to do that. I really enjoyed at that point. We started traveling, we started going to Sri Lanka and India and other places. And I just got so fascinated by like the hotels, the properties, the history, the people that work there. So I think at that point, I got really focused on hospitality and studying hospitality because I was so passionate about it. And I knew that maybe, and it's still a goal that I have, that at the end of this whole process, I want to have a historical property that has a garden that I invite people to, that operates,
Wow.
that's still there right
So
now.
that's the big dream.
The big dream. How I will get there will be a circuitous route. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I'd love to have a historic little quinta in Alentejo. That would be lovely. So that's kind of a vision that I had as maybe like a 13, 14-year-old. And I studied hospitality in the United States and then in La Roche in Spain. I worked in hospitality for 5 years for brands like Starwood and Mandarin Oriental and Kempinski, learned a lot, and then went over to the luxury travel advisor side where I focused on Morocco, Spain, Portugal, Jordan, and Israel and Palestine, and at different times. It's a big focus area, and I just became so passionate about just helping people have authentic experiences. I love the process of doing research trips, and you go and you meet your drivers, you meet the guides, you inspect properties. And I think people get into hospitality because they just have such passion for it. Like if somebody owns a hotel or owns a winery and you talk to them, they know all the little nitty gritty. They make decisions with purpose. And that's really, really inspiring. Someone owns a restaurant. It's not just they picked this tableware just because they put a lot of thought into the type of wines they're going to bring and the theme of their restaurant. And that kind of detailed passion is really, really
It's really their baby, right? It's really where they're putting all their love and care and attention.
It's true. And there's something to say about being surrounded by people that are so passionate. It just fills your cup much more.
Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit of a, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a little bit of a different travel experience to, let's say, going to the big hotels that are all carbon copies of each other. If you're going to an Airbnb or a guest house run by a family who's chosen the wine, or maybe they have their own vineyard. Is that something that you always wanted to incorporate into your trips, or is that just something that happened along the way?
Yeah, I think it's something that I always wanted to incorporate with trips because, you go back to the why, the Simon Sinek why.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do people travel? And a lot of there's a lot of different responses, but the people that I end up working with quite often that we're drawn to each other, they travel because they're curious. They want to be inspired. They want to learn. They want to gain something from their experience. And the biggest way that you can do that is to actually interact with people. And when you have those more sterile environments that, you go to McDonald's, or you have, you're in a big hotel it's the same hotel that's all over the world because they have the same structure. There's nothing wrong with that. There's people that travel for business, and that's really, really
It makes sense for them in that case, right?
yeah, but I think a lot of the time, if the purpose, the why that you travel is to learn and experience, I want to throw people into situations where, with comfort, with safety, they're going to be able to be exposed to passionate people that are going to teach them about the destination that they're in. And they're going to get their hands maybe get their hands dirty is not the right phrase, but they're going to get their hands in the soil so that they can understand.
It's like a raw interface with the experience, right? You're not on the you're not, there's not a big distance with a tour bus or a big glass. You're kind of there talking to the people, you're experiencing the food. Maybe even some things are a little bit rough and ready, but it's more of an authentic experience. Is that fair to say?
It's true. It's much more authentic experience.
Do you
And
ever have to bring clients around to that? Whereas they might be like, okay, we want this, like, we've been waiting all year for this. We want this like perfect experience and total relaxation. And maybe you have to influence them or convince them or say, but do you really want to see this place? Like, do you really want to see it? Do you really want to experience it like a local?
every now and then, I think. So the interesting thing, and I'm sure you go through the same experience in your field. It's a lot about reading between the lines because people may come to you with a list because we like doing research. There's a lot of information that's available online. And, but they sought out your help for a very specific reason because they're looking to help someone avoid some of the pitfalls that you go through by looking at things online. You want someone's kind of on the ground expertise in that specific place. So I think a lot of the times what people tell you, you kind of have to read between the lines. And I will say that my consultation calls, the first call that I have with a client, is very different from maybe the feedback that I get from them after they travel. What they may be most looking forward to, they may come with a list and I want to go to Lisbon and I want to see the elevator. I want to see, this convent. I want to go here. I want to do that. I want to see the Bellum Tower, check, 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 check. I want to go to Sintra. I want to see Pena Palace. I want to see Quinta da Galera. And, and you nod and you're like, okay, cool. And then you start to dig deeper. Like, what do you see? If you like start to have people describe what kind of experience they want, you kind of can start suggest different things. And it may be the right thing for them to go to a more popular place or a more touristy place or follow their checklist 80%. But then if I push them, direct them, nudge them, direct them gently, and with a lot of love into maybe having a cooking class or farm to table experience or going to a very, very, very specialty winemaker. Then when I come back, when they come back, those are the experiences they talk about. My post-trip feedback is often very much filled with that one guide that they had or that hotel owner that they met. They told them about Alentejo cuisine in the 1500s and how it's different. And I love hearing that because if they write to me and they're like, yeah, we followed our checklist, then why did you need me for? But if they write to me and they're like, oh my gosh, we're so glad that you connected me to this person and we got to learn for that, then they come back home and then they tell their family members and then they inspire their family members and then everybody's better off because they learn and they get excited and there's more awareness of Portugal or Spain or Morocco or whatever place that they go to.
That's so interesting because there's a big difference between what do you want to do and what do you want to experience, because we can do all the standard touristy sites and go do all the standard restaurants and all that sort of stuff, but what you want to experience is a much deeper question, a much deeper experience.
It's true. Couldn't you say that about life as well? Like when people ask you, what do you want to do for your work or what you want your job to be, what career you want to choose, that's what you want to do. But what do you want your life to actually be like? And I think that kind of, it's hard to have an answer for that when you're 13, but with life experience, to kind of get a better idea of what you want your life experience to be like and what you want your day to look like.
Yeah, exactly. The way it's a really good point. The way I think about it is not just what do you want the destination to be, but how do you want the journey to be? Because that's what you're actually going to experience. The destination is how you get your photos or how you get your marks on your CV, let's say in my world. But the journey is what you really experience and you get to enjoy and where you learn and you grow and you have all those sort of challenges. But it's a harder thing to convince people of, I think, sometimes because we want the photos or we want the nice thing on the CV or whatever it might be.
I wonder like why, because the check marks are so important mentally it's so important for us to get certain things done. It's so important to have certain life experiences or to be like, I want to start here and then I want to grow. This is what my life looks like. But it is a very interesting, you start out here and then you work your way to there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think, so that's something I wanted to ask you in terms of your journey to hospitality, because I think where you are now just sounds magical, right? You're helping people have these phenomenal experiences. They're learning, they're having fun, they're meeting new people, they're experiencing culture at the raw interface. But also when I think of hospitality, I worked in hospitality in cafes and bars and restaurants, late nights, people sometimes not always at their friendliest, especially if they've had a few too many beers. Um, there's often a journey in hospitality of doing that graft, picking up the glasses, mopping the floor, going down to cellar, fixing the kegs, or cleaning the plates or cleaning the bedrooms. Do you think that's an important part of hospitality that people getting into travel consultancy should experience, or is it enough for them to say, okay, I know that that exists. I don't really need to go into it.
Um, I'm open to being proven wrong, but I do think for me personally, it was really important to wash the dishes and work nights and work weekends and, maybe not get yelled at. That wasn't fun, but, also get yelled at by people that, that just need someone to yell at that point. And so I think for me, it was an important part of the experience because, for example, having been worked in restaurants, worked in cafes, worked night shifts, worked in hotels, worked in guest relations, having done all that, worked on the travel agency side, talked to the DMCs, my partners in country that would be delivering the service, seen how travel agents work, seen how guides and drivers are actually interacting, having had that breadth of background experience. Now, when I go to hotels and I set expectations for my clients, I'm able to be much more clear and direct so that it works better on both ends. So that I can understand from the hotel side why they might not be able to check in my client until 3 p.m. And then I can also set expectations for my client accordingly and make a plan in between.
Do you feel you have to speak a different language or a slightly different way to the different professionals?
I used to feel like that, but I think the type of clients I work with right now, there's just a mutual understanding and I treat both sides with respect and they in turn treat me with respect. So I feel like my client language and my supplier language is very much the same. And I think it should be. I think
the language of respect sounds wonderful.
You treat people with respect. They treat you with respect. I think one of my first, I forget what they're called. They're like performance reviews at a luxury travel agency. My manager told me, and I use these words still to this day because I feel like that holds on. But she was like, Talia, you're just no bullshit positive. And I feel like, you just got to get, I feel like travel and hospitality can have a lot of fluff because you're presenting, you're trying to, make people feel good. There's a lot of fluff that can come with that. But if you're direct with respect and still positive, like it's travel, things can happen. It's a very human business. People make mistakes. People miss things. Sometimes it's your client that forgets to send you their flight details. Sometimes it's your supplier that maybe gets the date down wrong. It shouldn't happen. It does. Treat people with respect. Be direct, but also be positive.
That's really nice. It's something I find I miss a little bit if I go to a nicer hotel, that they're so friendly and positive and polite that I'm just like, but like, talk to me, like I'm here, like I'm a human and I get it. Like it's super on one hand, I love it because it's super professional. On the other hand, I'm just like, but like we can talk, like we can have a bit of a laugh and we can connect a little bit.
Yeah.
But I guess that's tough in their position, right? Because they have to be very respectful, very polite, maybe it's a little bit of formality that I feel they have to do. Whereas I find like I connect better if they're a little bit informal.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think there's very much still the Swiss school of hospitality training that, it's very, especially in more refined properties like the Four Seasons or Mandarin Oriental, for example, there's definitely a certain style that they look for. And then there's secret shoppers and you're being judged by how you interact and what you say. You have to use someone's name 3 times in a conversation and you're being marked down if you don't do that. So there are a lot of guidelines and rules for that. But I think something that I'm trying to do with my business, because now I'm working for myself, and that was a lot of like, I know what the travel industry did. I see what they're like, but is that the way that people actually want to interact with it? And I think, like you said, people are looking for a more personal thing. You don't want like, you kind of want to lift the covers in a little bit. And there are some people that want a very professional service that's just, I'm going to tell you things and I'm going to show up and you're going to deliver the service. But what I'm noticing is with a lot of people, they really want to interact with their experience. They want to have a say in, they want to know what their trip is going to be like, what the details of the costs are. And I want to be able to cater to the curious people, the people that travel like I travel. I'm curious. I want to know where I'm staying. I want to know exactly what the details are. Do I exactly want to, spend 3 days doing research? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
But I want to participate in the experience. And I'm trying to kind of lift the cover off the travel industry. Not for like the dirty and nitty gritty parts. There's stuff there, but it's more like being very transparent with the consumer, which I think is what people want nowadays.
It's kind of like an extra, like if you have the travel agent who organizes your trip and puts together an itinerary, there's that, but then there's a deeper layer of having a personal relationship with you, maybe you being there if there's any issues coming up, also helping them with experiences and really digging into the culture.
Yeah, I think rather than just, being for them at 24 hours a day, because I think that's what a lot of travel agents sell themselves as, and kind of that white glove concierge service, and then they upmark their itineraries because you have to justify the time that you're promising to spend. What I try to do is just make things as transparent as possible, make the pricing as transparent as possible, and make the experiences as transparent as possible. Like who's actually providing the service, who's actually the guy that's going to be there for you, and then empower them to be in charge of their trip. So what makes people really nervous about their travel? If someone says everything's taken care of, and then you're like, but what about the information? What time do I show up? And like information is very, very powerful. So I try to give my clients and empower them to, you can't meet your driver. Here's his number. Here's his name. Call him first. Like there shouldn't be an extra layer of a middleman. Like
where did you learn your client relationship? Like I'm fascinated by your client relationship management skills. You seem to have tons of them. Did you learn this in hospitality? Because hospitality is really customers a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got clients, like that longer term, deeper relationship. Where did you learn these skills, or did you pick them up on the way by watching other people? Like there's a lot, because that's a core part of what you do, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it from experience. When you work for very luxury places, a lot of it is like it's the client. Like that's always first. It's the client that we're prioritizing, which means that a lot of the people that you work with tend to kind of get the short end of the stick. So your suppliers, if they make a mistake, they get penalized. And a lot of the times, like in order to serve the client, you have to upmark the itineraries and have a higher fee because you're spending a lot of time serving them. So I think when I was starting my business, I was kind of looking at, okay, I want to do this. I want to help people travel to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco because I love those countries and I'm so passionate about people falling in love with them just like I did. But I also don't want to do XYZ. So there's a lot of things that I didn't want to do that I thought I didn't relate to in the travel industry because especially since the pandemic, the way that we travel has changed and the way that as consumers we interact with travel services has also changed. And a lot of that comes with information. We like to have information, but we also recognize that there's a lot of information out there. So there's a lot of informational overload. So the way that I interact with clients, one, comes from my 10 years of being in luxury services and, wanting to be professional and detail oriented and things like that I wanted to keep. But on the other side, I wanted to talk to people like I wanted to be talked to. I want to have a lot of information when I plan things. I want it to be easily accessible and very easily navigated. And I'm willing to pay for that service if I know what I'm getting and if things are transparent. So that's kind of, I started to ask myself questions of like, how would I travel? And it was a process. I think in the beginning, I had very clear rules. And then I started saying no to people about things that they were asking. And I was like, wait a minute, that makes sense. Like they're asking, I would ask the same question. Why am I saying no to them getting a pricing breakdown? I would want a pricing breakdown and see like if there's a bigger part of the trip that doesn't really matter to me that's driving the cost.
So you're your first client.
I was, how would I want to sell to myself or what questions would I have? And I think if you focus on, treating people as clients rather than your they are your customers, but as your friends, like if people are asking you questions, you want to be able to answer them. So I think I structured my client relationships on trying to be open and honest about the way that I would answer questions.
Yeah, super. And really, I think that's, you've also put a nice tip in there, which is you being your first client and actually responding to your own needs. That's a piece of advice I give to people as well. Like if you're interested in being a freelancer or working for yourself, okay, you've got a client. Well done. Yeah. Now start working with that client and satisfy them as best as possible. And then you can apply the same thing to someone else because we've got high standards for what we want for ourselves. So why not just apply that to other people as well?
That's very true.
I'm interested in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. Why did you choose them as like, because you, like someone who's moved and traveled and lived in as many places as you must have really thought long and hard about choosing these three countries.
Yeah, well, one, I'm fascinated with history, and I feel like Spain, Portugal, and Morocco has a lot of shared history, similar backgrounds. So I think that there's a lot that people could learn from just focusing on that part of the world, whether it's for one trip or several trips. So I really liked learning about it, and I think there's something new to learn about each area that you go to. And personal experience. I lived in Spain for 2 years. I grew up in the Middle East, spent a lot of time living and working in the Middle East. So Morocco is very different from like the GCC area, kind of the Gulf countries or, the Levant countries or things like that. But it also is part of the Arab world, and it's also really fascinating. It feels very, very home to me in some ways. And then Portugal, Portugal's close to Spain. I ended up moving here and living here and, enjoyed so much planning trips here previously that when it came time to get back to this sphere, that it just made sense that this would be my specialty again. I also specialized in those regions when I worked for a luxury travel agency. My first position in the company was as a Morocco specialist. So I got to spend a lot of time doing research, going out, meeting drivers, guides, and things like that. And then I helped launch Spain and Portugal as a product several years later with the same agency. And it just made me fall in love with those countries even more. And so I think there's that professional base, there's personal love, and it's the part of the world that I really, really love.
Fantastic. It's interesting how your personal experiences and your professional life have all led,
Yeah.
right? They've all contributed to these three countries being your specialism. If
In
so,
charge of of what you want to do, it makes sense for your personal things to align with your professional
right,
passions.
it's one of the bonuses, right, of being a freelancer, being self-employed. Can I ask in terms of your own business and setting up that? I think a lot of people maybe they could listen to this and think, oh, this sounds wonderful. I'd love to be a travel consultant. You sell it very well, right? um, but then in terms of the business side, right, working with clients, you've spoken about very well. But also then in terms of getting the word out there, marketing, sales, how do you think about doing that? That can be, because usually when people are thinking of doing their own thing, it's like, oh, how do I get money? How do I get clients? How do I have
Right.
financial stability? Like, I don't like risk. These are all the kind of fears that we have when we're thinking of doing something for ourselves. How do you think about those? How did you approach those?
So I feel like I've been very lucky with the road that my experience took me on. And again, this is why I say like sometimes you have a passion and you start with, and you might have the end, but the road of how you get there looks very, very different. And I feel like all the experiences that I've had in my professional life have led me to this point. And so working in hospitality, working on the luxury travel agency side, and then during the pandemic for 2 years, I worked for a marketing consulting company, and they were very focused on organic traffic, organic leads, organic content, and things like that. And what I learned from that, which is what I use for my marketing right now, slightly different focus, is to really listen to what people are asking you and answering those questions. So this is my marketing strategy on TikTok and on Instagram. I focus on answering people's questions and trying to do that with honest ways, being very transparent and educating them. And so I don't think that there is a secret sauce that people should be holding close to their heart. The secret sauce oftentimes is Thousand Island dressing. Especially for travel, everything is available online. You can look things up online. It's just, you have to know what to look for. Just like with ChatGPT, you have to have the right prompts.
Yeah.
A lot about the ingredients that you put into your trip is about having the right prompts. So when I look at my marketing, I really focus on trying to be transparent and answer people's questions. And I do that in platforms that are accessible through me on TikTok and on Instagram. So that's how I get my leads. I don't spend any money on marketing. I just try to be honest and show up for people.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. So value added marketing, like you're giving the tips, you're giving the suggestions, you're responding individually to them, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, so sometimes I respond individually, but I try not to have planned trips in my DMs. Sometimes people have a lot of questions, and I try to make my services tier my services in a way that the first service is available to them pretty affordably. So they can always, if they have a lot of questions, they can always book a consultation call to them with me, and I direct them in that way.
So some people might feel that if you're giving all your tips and hints and secrets on TikTok or on social media, and if you're responding to their individual questions in the DMs, that maybe they have everything they need because they're going to use that and they're going to use Google. So like if my parents were listening to this, they would just think, oh no, you're giving away all your information, you're giving away all your gold. So why would they pay you? And they would worry. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I feel like there's two ways that I like to structure things. And this is something that I kind of learned as viable from working in the previous company that I was for marketing. And I tried to kind of focus on two big themes. One, the the big F word on the internet is frustration. And when people don't find what they're looking for, they're not going to give you another chance because they like you or they like the way that you sound or things like that. If people don't find the answers to their questions, they'll go to a different page. They'll go to a different thing. So it is in my best interest to answer the questions that people are asking and keep their attention and keep their interest. And the second thing is building their trust, because ultimately the big currency that we exchange with our customers, with our audience online is trust. What I aim to be is an expert in my space. I want people to look at me as somebody that they can go to for advice if they're planning a trip to Portugal, if they're planning a trip to Spain, if they're planning a trip to Morocco. And the only way I can build myself as an expert is by answering their questions, is by building that trust that I'm an authority in my space, I have experience, and they can trust me. So there's very little that I do in terms of sales once a client reaches out to me, because I've already built that trust through the content I make available on my social media platforms. And so to people that are like, well, you're giving out this information for free, good. It means that they consume it and then they can judge for themselves. Is this something that I can build on myself? I have tons of DMs and comments about people thanking me because they took my advice and they had an amazing trip. Great. I'm happy about that. That's amazing. If they experience a more local restaurant or they hire a driver that I recommended, it's a win-win-win. There's still that element of trust, and I might still get the recommendation to their friend when they're looking to build. But then there's people that look at my content and they're like, wow, I feel so overwhelmed with so many decisions I have to make. I just want to help someone along the way help me make those decisions. So I feel like as long as I try to answer their questions, avoid them feeling frustrated because I'm trying to hold back some information, and gain their trust, and I'm doing the right thing with my marketing.
They're wonderful tips. I absolutely love them. I think it's so important to build that trust with them. But also, like you mentioned a really good point, when you offer so much value, then there's still people who think, okay, yeah, thanks, I have all that, but still I feel overwhelmed, or I know you've got some more hidden secrets in there, and they still want more. So you never really over deliver and put yourself out of work, because that's the experience I've had as well, where people say, thanks for all the stuff you do online, but also still, I know you've got more and I want you to work with me individually and show me what that extra value is there. So I think that's a really good one. I am struck though, when you speak, you speak about it so eloquently that everything seems like easy, seamless, smooth, which is a wonderful characteristic to be able to display. But do you ever have any struggles with this? Are there any challenges?
Oh yeah. I mean, I want to talk about it a bit more on my channels, because I do think that I'm getting into the space of like I'm presenting things as very like easy and fun, and it is wonderful. I'm very happy with what I do. But when I was, for example, putting together my business plan a year ago, even though I had a decade of experience in this and I'm doing something very closely to, well, I wouldn't say that. I'm in a field that I'm very, very familiar with. I got rejected by I was presenting my business plan to a host agency, or the ones that certify and allow me to use their credentials to work as a travel agent and book things. And we had a couple of different calls and they rejected me because they thought I was being too niche. Their feedback was, Talia, you're focusing on Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. How are you going to get repeat clients? How are you going to get repeat business? Because to this day, the travel industry and travel agents specifically, it's still a bit of an outdated field. So if it works for them, it works for them. I'm great. I'm happy to hear that. But a lot of travel agents are still generalists. And for me, if I was, again, putting myself in the consumer's shoes, if I was going to go to someone for advice, I want them to actually have been in the destination. Not only that, but I want them to like know their things, know what they're talking about, be able to recommend local restaurants to me, local experiences, what not to do. I want them to have like in-depth knowledge of the product that they're talking about. So why would I go to a generalist and have them, type out information, or even more, outsource the travel planning if I can go to a specialist? So to me, I heard that and I was like, this is giving me so much like energy, like, because I feel very strongly that what I'm doing is where people are heading. So thank you for your no. I'm going to take that, put a little bit fire under my bum, and, and turn that no into the reason why I'm choosing to be very, very specific with what I do. And I think that pushed me to, to form the business and listen more to what people are saying and pretty much direct me into what I'm doing. Now, I definitely didn't, launch online and was like, yay, I have customers, I'm doing my business. It was definitely a process. It's after launching, it takes a lot of time to build up your reputation, to build traffic, to build clients and customers. And I think about 4 to 5 months in, I kind of had a moment of like, I got like 1 or 2 clients. What am I doing with my life? None of my channels are getting traction. Like some of them are getting a little bit of traction, but I was like, I'm not getting the income that I want coming in. Do I like do I get a job as a waitress to supplement this? Like, what do I do? And I think when you have questions like this, I even started applying to like panic applying to jobs at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it took someone coming back to me and offering me kind of what would be my dream job to be like, actually, no, I don't want to go back to working for someone else.
Oh, wow.
I really want to go back to work. Like, this is what I need to do. I feel inspired to do this. I just need to, how do I fine tune it in a way? How do I fine tune this big thing, what I have, into what's going to work? And you just get more specialized into your.
That's an interesting decision though, because okay, here's a dream job on the table, and you say no, I'm gonna accept this struggle that's actually not going totally swimmingly.
Yeah, I think it might be the way that I think I might do myself a disservice if I phrase it as a dream job. It was what I think would be a dream job 6 months from 6 months before I was in the position that I was in, because I think if I was offered this job when I was in my last week of my work, when I put my notice in, I probably would have taken it then, because I wouldn't have had that experience of getting passionate about an idea and putting so much work and sweat into building it. So it would be by all means a dream job of like the next step in my career. But I think by that point, I was like, I think I have something here that works. How do I make it land? And so saying no to it was just another like thing that was just like, okay, no, I really have to drive myself to.
It's like a new level of commitment, right? Because I've got that opportunity and now I'm saying, no, absolutely want to go for this one, and then doubling down. So did it make you take like more action, and what was that action that you took? Because it wasn't, obviously if you're applying for a job, not everything was going perfectly. What changed?
Yeah. So this was, I think, about like 2 days of just absolute panic. What am I doing with my life? And I think, it was maybe when I got that job offer, or maybe right before I got that opportunity, but I sent a voice message as I was panic applying, and, just like, what do I do with myself? How do I get like direct income, like building all these plans? I sent a voice message at like 5 o'clock in the morning to my friend who's like who also took a risk with her life path and was building her own thing. And it was more kind of an accountability voice message that was just like, okay, here's what I'm doing right now. Here's how I'm feeling. I'm just going to leave this here and promise myself that, I don't know, I'm holding my phone like this, but I'm just going to promise myself that I'm going to commit to this. And that I'm sending you this voice message as like a commitment to myself, because I really want to. This is what I want to do. And so sometimes I don't know if I believe in manifestation or fate or things like that, but there's something there, because literally the moment that I rejected that position, I got some of my reels started to get traction. My TikTok started to get, I think it got 450,000 views, and that kind of started to generate people into my other areas. And so it was literally like within a week. And again, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You have to do, like, I did a lot of work to make my TikTok stand on them on their own. But once you see a little bit of, like, it almost felt like I needed to go through this panic in order to be able to value the growth that I'm getting and then be able to make something out of that. So You know, it's hard not to be discouraged when you feel like you're putting yourself out there and it's just an echo chamber of nothingness.
For sure.
But if doing that is much better than succeeding right away, because as you're putting things out there, you're also learning a lot about yourself, your product. I think if I got traction on my first week of launching my business, I probably would have had a very different business than what I'm doing right now, because having that empty space really made me value every single piece of consumer feedback that I was getting and structure and restructure my services. So
wow. Yeah. So you have to listen really deeply then, right? When you're really focusing on each individual lead that comes in. It's interesting. I'm struck by the phrase, it's always darkest before the dawn, because I had a very similar experience. I was like, this isn't working. I'm not working. So, okay, I'm going to try one more thing. And then I tried one more thing. And then suddenly things started to work for me. So it's interesting to hear, because self-doubt does creep in, and there's good reason for it as well. And then, so I guess after that, you had to think about your services because people started to come in. How did you go about structuring your services? Because I think it's not as easily comparable maybe as other industries. Is that right? Or like you seem to, because you're kind of creating a new niche in a way of travel consultants, you have to kind of create the services and tell us what they are, right?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm still figuring out, because, I actually hired someone to help me figure out what I do and what my job description should be, because I don't think I'm doing anything super groundbreaking. I'm just fitting a need that I saw was there. And I just need someone to help me brand it in a better way, to be very direct with what I do. However, with the services, it was very touch and go. It was very much like, like I had established services, but it seems like people were trying to work in between that. So I had, I can plan your trip and I don't take any money for planning your trip. But then I found myself like, wait, there's a lot of boutique hotels that I want to work with and they're not going to pay me commission. And my clients were actually tipping me. They're tipping me for a different service that I was offering for free. And they were so excited to get it. I was like, wait, if people are trying to pay me, why don't I charge for this? And so it was very much just like trying to figure out what the need was, what people were looking at, and then, tiering it. And I will say, once I got to my 3 services that I felt really, really comfortable with, then it was just, let's go, let's educate people about this. So I think it took me about probably 2 months from when I started to see a lot of traction to when I felt really comfortable about the 3 services that I was offering. And the way to that was just to see what works. I just got I kind of just got okay with the idea that for now, some of the things are going to be free and I'm going to see what lands with people and try to get their feedback. And I think, seeing people try to tip me was a big thing of like, this they want for free, but this they're willing to pay for. So let's do that.
You can see where they find value and you can then shape your business that way. I think sometimes people feel they have to it's one and done. I'm going to create it and then try sell it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Whereas in reality,
you have to mold it. And I'm pretty sure that in a year, what I offer will be a little bit different. I think the base will be the same, but if you have very strong ideas and you're unwilling to change, they can work for you. But I would say, as a business owner, you really have to listening is the biggest thing. Listening and seeing what lands and, trying, like you said, trying this thing and then trying another thing. There's a lot of energy that you have to put in. But if you continue to be curious and if you continue trying, there's so much more that you will get back from it. And your business, the businesses that succeed are the businesses that continue to listen to their clients. There's so many stories out there about Sears that was successful in the early 1900s because they had their catalog, they were sending things out. And then there's just empty buildings because they weren't continuing to listen.
Or Blockbuster, who could have bought Netflix for $1 million or something ridiculous. And they just said, well, who's going to watch stuff on the internet, right?
And I'm sure there is now something developing that's going to be complete contrast to Netflix, because maybe Netflix is stopping to listen to their clients and they're maximizing profit, or they're putting their investors in the first place. So I think listening to your consumers and trying to do right by them is the biggest thing. Now, do I always say yes to my clients? No, but I do try to listen when they give me their feedback.
Do you worry about the travel industry at all and the changes to flights and stuff like that? Obviously, after COVID, from my perspective, from what I could see, there seemed to be a big shift in terms of flights getting more expensive, some carriers reducing the amount of flights, then new restrictions coming in. Do you think that's something to worry about, or do you think it's just gonna circle back to the start?
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly support an airline that's customer first. If there's an airline that comes out there that, makes travel, that delivers on their promises and makes travel really convenient. The way that the airline industry right now is, it's probably that's not going to happen. But I think flights aside, but also included in this, flights and everything together. I think the way that people interact with the travel industry is changing. And I think people are looking for a lot of information. They want to be informed. They want to be informed because there's a certain level of confidence and reassurance that comes from having all the information at your fingertips. That's one. But two, people also want to have the reassurance of someone telling them, I know what this means. Here's what to do about it. So what I noticed from my clients is that they don't necessarily want me to be like, yeah, everything's fine. Your trip is going to be perfect. Everything is going to go smoothly. I can't promise, that's out of my hands, but I can educate you what to do if your flight gets canceled, because it can happen.
Yep.
I can educate you on what it means and what to do if Seth goes on strike in the Lisbon airport. I can tell you what happens if the Pope is here during, your trip and what to do about it. I can't make it all better, but I can tell you how to react to something that's happening. And I think with COVID, there came this understanding from a lot of the travel consumers that are out there that things can go very wrong during travel. So what do I do about it and how do I prepare about it? And I think that's why it helps to have someone else that you view as an expert tell you and help you out in that.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Can I ask to wrap up, if you were talking to someone who was interested in getting into this, maybe they're in their early 20s or their late 20s, or they're on a similar journey to you, maybe they're working in hospitality and they're thinking, I want to work for myself. I want to move on to bigger and better things. What sort of tips or advice would you have for them?
I would say start putting yourself out there. If this is what you want to do, get a TikTok, get an Instagram. The wonderful thing about professional world today is that it doesn't require months of planning to start educating your niche and your sphere. So I would say start putting yourself out there, but even more, figure out what you're passionate about, because just like the fire that I got from being rejected because I wasn't a generalist and I wasn't going to get repeat clients that would want to go to Spain again, that made me so passionate about niching down. And sometimes I think about niching down even further. But if you're passionate about, for example, Umbria, because you live there and you love and you want to educate other people about the right restaurants to go there, do that. Make that your niche. Make yourself the go-to person to talk to people about Umbria or Copenhagen or other places. Become the go-to expert in your space, and you can start doing that now. And so I think the more that you become a specialist in your field, follow your passion and put yourself out there, and then you'll learn along the way.
Yeah, and as you go and as you put out content, you can kind of figure out what is interesting to you as well, and you can get that feedback from the clients, like you are getting, to continuously iterate, improve, adjust, and start to build up a bit of momentum. And then maybe people come to you one day and say, okay, can we pay you for this? This sounds fantastic. Right?
Yeah. It's amazing when you get that first message, just like, can I pay you for XYZ? Yes.
Yes.
Let me design that.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Talia, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your experience, and your top tips with it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure.